And that's when I first got started writing. We had literally paid off $100,000 of my student loan debt in 6 months. And we realized, okay, holy cow, like it's been 6 months and we paid off $100,000. And I'm a primary care physician, I was like, how did this happen? And so I sat down and wrote out what happened. And, it was just a document. And I was like, Josh, my husband, asked Josh, like, what should I do with this? And he goes, why don't you just put it out there in a blog?
Welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast, the show where we teach you how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want.
Doctor.
Now, here's your host, Dr. Alex Schloe.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Physicians and Properties Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Alex Schloe, and as always, I'm so grateful that you're here listening to another episode. Today's podcast episode was with none other than the Frugal Physician, Dr. Disha Spath. This was a fantastic episode. We covered everything from personal finance and how she paid off almost $250,000 in debt in 18 months, which is absolutely amazing. We talked about that journey and some money mistakes that she made and physicians commonly make. And we also discussed legacy, heritage, what it means to teach your kids about money, and some different tips and tricks to teach your kids about money, how to value money, how to respect it and treat it as a tool, and how to teach your kids more and more about finances. So this was a really great episode. And this is the stuff that's really important. It's great to learn about how to buy a rental property or how to start a small business, but the family piece is what's important. That is what is going to be left behind when you die. So it's worthwhile. It is so important to invest in your family, invest in time with them. And I'm excited to say we're packing up. We're getting ready to go camping for about 4 weeks in Yellowstone Glacier and the Tetons. So I am looking forward to spending that time with my family and diving deep with them during that time. And I hope that you get some time to do that soon as well. So without any further ado, let's get started with today's episode with Dr. Disha Spath. Dr. Disha Spath, it is so good to have you on the Physicians and Properties Podcast today. It was an honor to recently be on your podcast, The Frugal Physician, and really excited to have you on so I can learn about your journey this time. How are things going in upstate New York?
Thank you so much for having me. Right now, we've had a lot of rain, but it's warm, so I'll take it.
There you go. Yeah, that's good. Probably ready for the snow to be over with, I would imagine, at this point. So rain's probably a welcome change.
Yes, exactly. I'm a Southerner by upbringing, so the snow and the cold is still a little bit new to me, though I am acclimating it, now that I've been here for 7 years. But yeah, no, it's beautiful. I love it here in spring and summer.
That's awesome. Well, for folks who don't know you, do you mind sharing a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Sure, yeah. I'm an internal medicine physician. I started off as a hospitalist, and I've basically done inpatient and outpatient work my entire career. I am also the founder of the Frugal Physician. So I decided that I was a total neophyte when it came to physician finance when I first became an attending, and realized that there's a lot for me to learn. And so I started learning. I started deep diving into personal finance. And as I did that, me and my husband really went down the rabbit hole of all the finance things. And then I started a debt snowball and, started investing heavily. And anyway, we turned our financial situation around from living paycheck to paycheck to, being financially well in a few years, in 3 years. And we started writing about it, podcasting about it around 2018. And I've been doing it ever since. And this has been my side hobby, side gig, I guess. Just something I'm passionate about. And my podcast, Finding Financial Freedom with the Frugal Physician, and my website, thefrugalphysician.com, it helps me continue to learn, on the job and talk to interesting folks like you, and hopefully help other people by sharing my hard-earned lessons with them.
Absolutely. I love that. And I think a lot of us have similar stories, kind of realizing like, hey, we don't know anything about financial freedom or financial literacy. I didn't get taught any of that in medical school. And so grateful for some resources along the way and getting into that. And then now having the opportunity to talk to other physicians about financial literacy and real estate and entrepreneurship, it is awesome. And more people need that education, need to hear that. And so it's been really cool to follow along with your journey and learn about what you're doing. Were there specific resources when you first got started that were really beneficial for you? Or if someone's listening to this and they're thinking like, hey, I'm in that same spot. I just graduated residency. I want to learn more about financial literacy. Anything in particular that you'd recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. So books, I have a podcast, but I think books are a great way to learn. Podcasts are a great way to continue to learn once you get the basics down. But for the basics, I would say Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins, The Millionaire Next Door, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And then, of course, the White Coat Investor book. The first one I thought that book was my eye-opening experience. I'd been looking for just one condensed book that would give me all the information I needed as a physician handling my finances. And after many, many years of searching, I found that one, and I was like, yes, this is it. This is what I need, So, and Jim did a great job with that book. So, for any physician looking to just get their, bearings in the financial world, those are good places to start.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'd also throw in The Rich Doctor by Dr. Tom Burns. That's a really good book as well to lay that foundation, and kind of opens up the idea of, okay, well, what is this idea of cash flow and quote unquote passive income and alternative investments and a lot of things that we don't necessarily get as well. So yeah, I agree. Those are all fantastic resources. And I think, bottom line, a lot of times physicians that I'm talking to are just scared to get started or just scared because they don't know. And I'm like, if you can go through med school, residency, fellowship, and excel in all of that, you can 100% take control of your financial journey.
Yes, agree. I just thought of, as you were talking, real estate investing, the book on real estate investing by Brendan Turner, huge. And say one more, I'm forgetting it. Oh, Tax-Free Wealth. I forget the author of that one, but that one's really great to learn about the tax code and how you can make it work for you.
Yeah, there's a lot of fantastic tax benefits. Been fortunate to become friends with Amanda Hahn, and she's amazing. She's been on the podcast a couple times. So go back and take a listen to those episodes if you want to understand how real estate can really benefit you from a tax perspective, because that's huge. I mean, our tax bill as physicians, we're really lucky to be high income earners typically for the most part. And our tax bill is quite substantial, probably the biggest expense that we all have. And so figuring out legal and great strategies to combat that tax bill can be really important.
Yeah. And I look at it less as trying to lower my tax bill, but more as just trying to do what the government is wanting me to do, which is, the government wants to give you tax incentives, and that's what the tax code is about. So really maximizing the use of those incentives and doing what they want you to do to lower your tax bill is, there are many, many legal ways to do that. And real estate is a very good one of them.
Yeah, it sure is. I mean, the government wants to house people, right? So providing housing is important. By real estate investing, you're also creating more jobs. There's a lot of opportunity. So it's a good incentive for the government to incentivize real estate investing as well. I completely agree. Well, how did you mentioned some of the resources when you first got started. How did that journey start? What was kind of the first steps in kind of taking control of your financial life? Let's take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors. As a physician, balancing your medical career with a growing real estate portfolio can be challenging. That's where Dr. Doc comes in. They don't just offer loans, they provide tailored financial solutions designed by doctors for doctors. Dr. Doc has already helped customers secure millions fast, headache-free funding for their real estate investments. With their streamlined process, you get quick liquidity, no prepayment penalties, and a soft credit check, meaning no impact on your credit score if a deal falls through. Looking to expand your investment property portfolio? Dr. Doc offers competitive rates and customized options to help you build wealth and diversify your assets. They also offer solutions for consolidating debt or home improvements. Join the thousands of doctors who trust Dr. Doc for fast funding and personalized support. Say goodbye to financial roadblocks and hello to your next investment success.
Yeah, the first step, I think, was just realizing that even though people thought I was doing great, people told me I was doing great. It looked from the outside like I was doing great. But, realizing that I wasn't fine. We weren't fine. I had gotten my first attending job and, I was a sole earner at that time because my husband had just gotten out of the military. He was in the Army and he was using the GI Bill to do his master's in project management. And so he was studying from home and I was the sole earner at the time. And we were having kids. So I was having to take unpaid maternity leave. And we had bought a house right out of residency. The first job I had as an attending, we bought a nice house and stretched our budget too far. Didn't account for the unpaid maternity leaves and the student loan bills that continue to come during those maternity leaves. And so we were feeling like we were living paycheck to paycheck and just strapped for cash. And so I was in this like super scarcity mode. Even during my maternity leave, which was unpaid, I was trying to create like a nice playroom for my kids. And so we had an old couch and I didn't want to spend money on a new couch. So I thought I would just sew a cover for that couch. And I was literally like that not entire 6 weeks, but like a good 4 weeks of those 6 weeks that I took off. I was downstairs away from my baby sewing. And I'm like, because there were so many like little pins and, dangerous things around, I couldn't have my toddler down. And I would just see my baby for feedings. And I was like, what am I doing? I am spending my entire maternity leave that I'm taking this whole time off without pay, which I'm really stressed out about. And I'm spending it away from my babies. The whole point was to spend time with them. And so I realized I was doing it all wrong. We had a paycheck, but not a steady one at that time. And we should have had our financial stuff together better than we did. And I was in such scarcity mindset that I just was wasting, I was not aligning my time with what I was actually trying to do, which was to spend time with my kids during that time. So I said, I need to get this straightened out. And at that time, I was sewing and listening to the audio of the White Coat Investor and listening to him tell me everything that I'd done wrong. And so I was like, okay, I need to change. We need to change. So I like march upstairs from the downstairs basement playroom. And I'm like, Josh, we have to do something. We're doing it all wrong. And he goes, okay. Take a deep breath. There are a lot of hormones at play here, but he was like, okay, so he talked me down. It's like, okay, let's sit down. Let's like figure out what's happening, like what's going on with this. So the first step we took was just sitting down, logging into all our accounts, figuring out how much we owed to whom and what kind of income and assets we had. So just making a balance sheet. And I think, and that was a big step for us because like, it's so easy to take on debt and have like, recurring payments going out of your bank account, but not really know how much interest you owe on certain debts or how much there is left, and all of that. So all those details that it's easy to take on debt in our culture because they want you to and not realize exactly how much you owe. So to sit down and look it all in the face, look the student loan bill in the face with the balance and the interest and all of that is a big step and was a big step for us. And after that, we started tracking our actual spending, which was quite intimidating. We had not done that yet. We hadn't made a budget. We didn't know really where our money was going on a granular level, So to make that budget spreadsheet was the next big heave, right? And then once we realized where our money was going, after a few months, it was easy to see where we were overspending, like Amazon. And, my daily Starbucks habit was maybe twice daily sometimes when I was working, it all adds up. And so we realized the ways we could streamline the spend and started saving more money at the end of the month. And that extra money, we decided after listening to many more podcasts and reading more books, specifically Dave Ramsey and the debt payoff snowball, we decided to do a snowball towards our debt. And it took the last, whatever was left at the end of the month and put it towards one of the debts and paid that off and then paid the next one off and then paid the next one off. And in that process, we paid off 2 cars and all of my student loans. I decided to pay off my student loans because I was not eligible for PSLF because I was not working for a 501c3 non-for-profit hospital. I was at a non-for-profit hospital, but working for a company that that was for-profit contracting with that hospital. So anyway, so we paid off my student loans because that was like a big headache in my life at that time. And very glad we did it. We did the student loans, $238,000 in about 18 months.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and we made big moves during that time. So like big moves as in we moved across the country. We decided that we were paying too much for housing costs. And also my babies would need daycare, and, 2 babies in daycare eats into your budget. And so we decided, you know what, let's just relocate closer to family where we can have some of their help. And so we relocated to New York from Savannah, Georgia at that time. And as we relocated, we said, well, this is a really good time to actually even lower our monthly costs more. Why don't we downsize? And so we downsized into a rental, about half the square footage that we had, and really just, took the excess, what we saved from that process, and put it towards the student loans. And then my husband also finished his master's and got his job. So he started working again. And so that's when we really started shoveling a lot of money into the debt snowball. And thank you. I'll give you a chance because I've been
Yeah, definitely a lot of things to unpack there, but so cool to hear that journey, and that you were just willing to do what it takes to pay off that debt and to cut your expenses. The only way people are going to be able to save more or invest more is if they cut those expenses or if they make more money. And so you have to figure out which way to do that. And there's multiple different ways. And I think you did something that's really unique that people need to think about, and that's the geographic arbitrage, right? Like you moved from a higher cost of living area because you knew that, hey, if I move to New York, I can be closer to family. I can save on childcare, which is just insane how expensive it is, and housing and all the above. And those are some different ways that folks can really make a huge difference in their journey that doesn't require a ton of sacrifice other than, the move and the downsize and those sorts of things. But it's not forever, right? Like it's not something that you're going to have to sacrifice in that regard forever. And so I think it's important to think about, well, hey, maybe I need to consider practicing medicine somewhere else for a certain period of time so I can really set one foot in front of the other and keep climbing up that mountain and tackle that debt and go from there. And in regards to the debt, $238,000 paid off in 18 months is amazing. How did you feel when that was done?
Fantastic. Oh my God. I mean, like a huge weight was lifted off my shoulders. First, I'd like to just comment on the geographic arbitrage. I think you laid it off really well. You laid it out really well, but most people wouldn't consider going from Georgia to New York arbitrage, but we forget that New York's a really big state. New York City is really expensive, but upstate New York is not. And the taxes are high up here, but there are actually also a lot of good veterans benefits in upstate New York. So we pay the same amount in tax up here that we did down south because of the veterans benefits. So that's something to think about. And I think being a military family also makes moving seem like a much smaller deal, in other families that have only been in one spot for a long time, that might seem like an incredible heave. But when you're a military family, you move, like that's what you do. And we were okay with that. And so, and once we made these huge moves and decided that, that we were just done with the debt, then we paid it off, and we used a tracking mechanism for my student loans because it was such a large amount. Just to keep us motivated, we decided to put macaronis into a jar, and each macaroni was $1,000. And so we put 238 macaronis plus, I think we were going to pay like 50 grand in interest or something, over the time frame. And we put it all in the jar. And every month when we made payments, we would take some macaronis out of the jar. And at the end, when we paid it off, we had, as a family, confetti everywhere and, just really woohoo, because at the end of every month, we would celebrate each payment. And then at the end of the loan being gone, we made a delicious bowl of mac and cheese and ate all that extra interest.
That had to be the best bowl of mac and cheese you've ever had.
Fantastic.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. Well, it's so cool to do that as a family and for your kids to see that, like, the importance of paying off debt and celebrating that. I was going to ask, like, hey, what did you do to celebrate paying off $238,000? Because I think we forget sometimes that we need to celebrate these wins, and it's okay to celebrate them. It's okay to spend some extra money to celebrate some of these wins because they're massive. I mean, almost $250,000 in debt paid off is enormous. And so that is so cool. I don't think my son Jack would be patient enough to wait until everything was paid off to have the mac and cheese. So I'd have to think of another way if I was in that situation, but that's really cool.
Oh, we had like other mac and cheese. This is the special mac and cheese. But yeah, that's how my kids learn to count, is counting those macaronis. And, and that financial management has been like a huge deal in their life because I write about it. I talk about it all the time. And we, and I am very proactive in teaching them the concepts that I wish I had known, but yeah, so I hope some of it sticks and, I hope it helps them in the future as well.
Let's sit there for a minute because I think that's super important, is how can we pass on what we've learned from a financial perspective to our kids? Has there been any specific tips or tricks or things that you found really, really resonate with your kiddos?
Yeah, so we've been doing, sorry, I'm blanking on the name of the app. 1 second. It's Acorns, but oh my God, shoot. Why can't I remember the name of the app that we are using? Good Lord. It's like they have their own card. Go Henry. There it is. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So some of the tools that we've used to teach them, first, books, right? I do book reviews on my blog, or at least I used to. And now I do book interviews or author interviews on my podcast. And so when I'm reading the book, sometimes my kids will ask me about it. And then we read Dr. Fawcett's real estate investing book together, me and my older one, Aiden. And, and he was like really into it and asking me about taxes and like, what's escrow and that kind of stuff. I mean, like it was really cool to see him learning by reading with me. But what's been really impactful is actually getting them their own accounts set up. So we're using Go Henry as their checking account. And, there are a few of these apps out there. There's Go Henry and there's a Greenlight. But Go Henry is nice because it may give them an allowance, but also it gives them incentive to do whatever I want them to do. So like I want them to make their bed in the morning or, help with the dishes or whatever, the household chores. I can set a certain amount of money to give them and check it off as they do it every week or every day. And then so they get paid for those things. And then they have that money and they can choose to invest it. They can choose to donate it or put it into their savings account. And in their savings account, I can match them. So I do like 100% match. So whatever they put in their savings, I put that much in there as well. And they get their own checking card, their own debit card to use at, whatever they want to use it for. So they have a little bit of control over, their own spending. And it's really fun to see like my older one saved enough money to buy himself an iPad, and he's really cashing in on that 100% match right now. It's kind of hurting, but he shovels it all into his savings account. And then they have their own UTMAs and we use Acorns for that, for investing. So if they want to invest their money, we will transfer it over for them. And then they get to, see how their investments are growing. And another good thing on both Acorns, but more on Go Henry, is that they actually have learning modules that they can earn money. So they learn about crypto. They have these cute little modules that really simplify the financial concepts down so that they can understand it with a lot of good cartoonish graphics. So they went through all of that teaching. So anyway, so I think, so it helps for them to get the information presented to them in a palatable way for them, And so I feel like they're learning about the whole process. My older one just did a presentation on the stock market and the Fed in his class. So he's becoming quite the financial nerd.
That is awesome. Yeah, I love that. I love hearing different tips and tricks. I have 2 boys and I want them to understand money, and it is a tool, but how to respect it and steward it appropriately. I don't know if you've heard of Scott Donnell, but he does a lot in terms of teaching kids about finances and money, and just listened to a fantastic podcast episode with him on the Action Academy podcast. And it was so impactful. And he talks a lot about, even when your kids are younger, you could have 4 jars: save, spend, invest, and tithe, and you break those up however you see fit. And then, they have to put their money that they earn in those jars and treat it accordingly. And then if they, do something bad or you need to punish them, then they need to take money out of their spend jar and give that back to you. So they're learning like, hey, money has consequences as well, which is really cool. He does what he calls like brain gigs. And so they, can earn extra money if they read this book and write a book report, or like Rich Dad, Poor Dad, for example, and write some different ways about how he could be a rich dad instead of a poor dad and different things like that. So really cool. I would encourage folks to check him out as well, Scott Donnell. But I just love learning different ways because I think it's an awesome time right now because you can learn everything. Like Go Henry sounds like a great platform. I wrote it down. I'm going to check it out. But you can learn anything and everything right now, but there are so many different options. So it's kind of figuring out, hey, what works best with your family, with their kids and in their interest as well. And I hope that my kids, by, seeing me doing the podcast and seeing us, working hard and talking a lot about real estate and entrepreneurship, that really spurs some interest in them from that perspective. Because I think we're going to pivot in the future away from traditional education and college and those sorts of things being as important, more towards entrepreneurship, small business, those sorts of things being more important. So I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are from that perspective.
Absolutely. I mean, it is unfortunate, in my opinion, that we are so trending away from valuing a college education. But the thing is, a lot of us go to college, but we don't really come out with extra skills that we had before, when we graduated high school. We could have just started a business then. I think us modeling good financial behavior hopefully helps them also take that forward into their lives. I keep talking about my older son, but he recently every day he comes up with a new business idea. It's so funny. But his idea of a business is doing something, offering a service and not charging for it. I'm like, honey, it's not a business. It's just a hobby if you're not charging for it. but he's like trying to teach our neighborhood kids how to solve Rubik's Cubes because he's like super into them. And so he does like cubing competitions and can solve a cube in like 30 seconds. Oh my God, I am being an obnoxious mom right now.
God, this is awesome. Brag on your kids. This is great. And hopefully he'll listen to this one day and be super proud, to hear this. And so, no, that's awesome. I love that. And I was going to say, he sounds incredibly intelligent and maybe one day he's running the Fed. It sounds like from everything he's learning, which is really, really cool. But no, I think this is what's most important, right? Like how our kids perceive money, how our kids value time and all these sorts of things is way more important than like, this is how you buy your next business or this is how you buy a rental, right? Like this is the stuff that's going to matter when we're gone is, hey, what do our kids know? What do they use? What's that heritage look like? And so no, don't you're not being an obnoxious mom at all. Please brag away.
Yes. Well, I just love encouraging the entrepreneurship mindset in him. I wish I had been more like that when I was a kid, I had to have a head start like they do. Hopefully will, pay off for them. And I wish a lot more people learned it, at an early age.
Yeah, I agree. We're a big dinner table family. We always have dinner, all our meals together, but dinner in particular. And we've started really incorporating a lot of questions. My son, Jackie's 4.5, and he loves doing questions. And a lot of time his answers are just really funny. Like yesterday, we were talking about a box of questions, essentially. And one of them was, if you could have a machine that could make any food you want instantaneously, what would it be? And like, of course, his answer was ice cream, right? But just like asking those questions and being open at the dinner table has been helpful. And we've started, we talk about money and we talk about business and we talk about podcasting and all these different things because we want them to be exposed to it and not think of money as like a bad word or something that we can't talk about. And, that was kind of how it was in my family. We didn't have a lot of money growing up and things were always stressful when it came to money. And I really felt that tension amongst my family. So I always wanted it to not be the same way and was like, hey, there's got to be another way to do this. And so I've taken that into my parenting. But I would encourage folks, like, do your kids even know anything about money and your finances? If not, like, take some small steps to teach them that. Even that alone can be helpful to understand this is something that is not taboo, that we should all be able to talk about.
Exactly. Recently, my kids asked us our net worth. How do you feel about that?
I don't think Jack would have any idea. But no, I think it's totally, fine to share your net worth. And I don't shy away from that. If someone asks, I'll share it. And I think it just shows, trying to think how to best answer it. I think it shows an understanding of where you are in your financial position, which I think is really important. And I think the more kind of metrics and numbers that we track over time can be really helpful. I'm guilty of that. Like, I feel like I need to be tracking my net worth more to see that progress. I usually do it like once a year or every 6 months or whenever I need to do a personal financial statement. And I feel like tracking that can be really helpful. I think as doctors, sometimes we're anxious about just talking about money in general because maybe that wasn't modeled for us, or maybe, there's just that stigma around money in general. And like, people on the outside think, oh, all doctors are rich, which is very far from the truth. And so I think it's totally fine if that's something that you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah. And that's the decision we made too. I mean, we kind of told them a general number. I am all for financial transparency. I do worry though sometimes if we share like big net worth numbers that they think that we're richer than we are, just because of the social definitions. But, yes, we shared our net worth number with them, but also qualified it as, a lot of it is equity that's tied up, that it's not available. And we need way more than that to retire, and that kind of thing. And so, no, we're not going to be lavishly spending all the time,
Yeah,
but,
yeah. Illiquid.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
A lot of it, real estate assets and so forth. Yeah, I completely agree. And, I think that something that is interesting that I've been thinking about, I recently read Die with Zero by Bill Perkins, which is a really good book if you haven't read that. And just kind of thinking more about inheritance, and what that may look like. And I think it's kind of interesting how we have that set up, how it's kind of that mindset of, some people probably are just waiting for like family members to die for hopes of inheritance. And I think that as parents, we could really bless our kids throughout aspects of their life, not in a way to make them disrespect money or to like give them everything they ever want and feed them that silver spoon. Like, my kid's going to buy his first car. He's going to pay his car insurance. He's going to pay for his own gas, et cetera. Like, he's going to learn the value of money. But I think there's different steps along the way that we could bless them that is maybe quote unquote their inheritance, but throughout their life, right? It would be way more beneficial for me to bless Jack when he's, 30 and he's married and he's trying to buy his first home and give him X amount of money towards that instead of waiting until I'm hopefully 100 and, he is 70 and doesn't need the money. You know what I mean? And so it's been kind of a unique way to think about that. And I think having those kind of touch points along the way may be really beneficial. I heard on that same podcast I mentioned, he was talking about, Scott Donnell was talking about someone that he coaches or something like that. Their in-laws would take the kids every year for 1 week, and they would pay for an anniversary trip for their son and his wife. And it was always something pretty epic. And they were saying that how cool it was to bless them in that way. And they became so much closer with their grandkids by doing that as well. And so it's just really cool ways to think about, what do we want that to look like? And what do we want all this extra effort and hard work and money that we make? What do we want that to go towards? And I'll get off my soapbox here in a second, but I think a lot of times people also struggle with, and I know I have, like, how much is enough, right? Like how much money is enough? I think the more money that folks like us make, the more good that we can do with that money. So it's almost selfish for us not to try and make as much money as possible, if that makes sense. Because it's more physicians that hear about financial freedom and their lives change and their family tree changes. It's more assisted living homes that get open. And so more seniors are getting the quality care that they need. It's more, it's just that economic wake is massive. And so anyways, I'll get off my soapbox and, I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that. But this has been really fun to kind of dive deeper into things that really matter in life other than just starting a business or buying a rental property.
Yes. I echo all of your sentiments, and I totally agree about, giving kids their inheritance in advance while you're alive. I think that would be a lot more gratifying than giving them a lump sum at the end of our lives. And but also making it clear to them that that's what we're doing, right? So we may die with zero, but we're going to bless you along the way instead of you waiting for us to die off. And yeah, I think that's a great idea. And that also brings to mind the concept of charity, giving to charity as we go. This is something I have gotten into as I've gotten more into finance. It's very easy to live in the scarcity mindset all your life, especially when you come from not enough. And just keep thinking that I'm going to save as much as I can. And, I will give later. I'll give when I die if I have any extra, or I'll. But I think charity has a very important role to play in financial mindset and money management. Not only does it, help you help others, it also helps you realize that you have enough, right? That there is enough. And when you set aside a certain amount to give away, it helps you also realize how much you already have, right? And in order to give money away, you need to be pretty good at managing your own money. And so I believe strongly in a charitable goal every time we do something. And you're helping people around you, you're helping your community. And it does, if you're building a business or whatever, it also helps you, right? Because you make the contacts and are involved with your charities before you even retire, so that when you do retire, you have something to go to give yourself purpose. So, I do feel like that everyone should consider involving or at least shooting for a charitable goal as they go along as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I love that. And I think we all as physicians want to serve and want to help others. And that's another way to do it, right? Like, hey, we can take this money that we made on this real estate deal and we can give some of that to others. And that's going to really help from a fulfillment perspective. One thing we did is we kind of set up our accounts based off the profit first model. And so each account goes into a different bucket and it's split up by percentages and so forth. But we have a giving account that's outside of like tithing to our church and some other Christian organizations that we're part of. But it's just 10% from real estate or our investments goes right into this account. And it's been really cool to just use that in unique ways, and like just random things pop up. And it's been awesome to be able to have that abundance mentality. And for me, I struggled a lot with scarcity. I struggled a lot with like attachment to money. And so it's forced me to be like, hey, I'm putting this money in this account and I'm giving it away. And it feels so good. And it's like, just little things. Like my dad went on a cruise and I sent him $50 and be like, hey, get some drinks on the cruise ship, and it's just little things like that. But it just feels so good to be able to do that, and I'm hopeful that one day that's $50,000 that I'm giving to, whoever, and so it's just really, really cool to have that mindset and that mentality. And then I always notice too, the more you give, the more you get back. And that's not a reason to give, but if you just have that abundance mentality, you're just really willing to give, you're going to get blessed. And maybe it's not one for one, and maybe it's not now, maybe it's 20, 30, 40 years in the future, but it will happen. And so I think it's really important, and it just really sets the posture of our heart to be willing to think about more than just ourselves, our income and what we make, and kind of break the chains that money can have on our heart.
Yes, I love that. Well put.
That's awesome. Well, thank you. The Frugal Physician, let's talk about that. So really cool what you've created and what you've done and how many folks you've impacted. How did the Frugal Physician come to be, and how have you seen that grow over time?
Yeah. So the Frugal Physician was a moniker that I adopted, but it was kind of like a Asper moniker because I am actually, so just to give a little background, I was born into a very well-to-do family, a politician's family in India. My grandfather was the finance officer of the large, I think it's 2-3 million people town that we were in. So he was very financially savvy, and they were well off, and we lived a very comfortable life. And then we moved here after my father passed away, and my mom brought us here as a single mother, and she had no assets to her name. And then we were incredibly poor for the next half of my life, my young life. And so I've seen both sides of it. And, I got a taste of the nice things, and then I went through a period of extreme scarcity. And so I like nice things, and it's very easy for me to spend and overspend. I also have that scarcity mentality in there from the second part of my childhood. So anyway, it came about because I realized my tendency to overspend, but I aspired to be a frugal physician. And as we were paying off my student loan debt and then frugaling down again, I really got into optimizing spending and value-based spending and life hacks, things that make life better and save you money. And I felt like I wanted to create a platform to share those hacks, share things that would make my life better and other people's lives better, and save them money. So that's why I created the platform, The Frugal Physician. And that's when I first got started writing. We had just literally just paid off $100,000 of my student loan debt in 6 months. And we realized, okay, holy cow, like it's been 6 months and we paid off $100,000 and I'm a primary care physician, So I was like, how did this happen? And so I sat down and wrote out what happened. And it was just a document. And I was like, Josh, my husband, asked Josh, like, what should I do with this? And he goes, why don't you just put it out there in a blog? And so that's how the Frugal Physician came about. He's like, okay, let's see. This is how you buy a domain, and this is how you set up a blog. And we just set up a very basic website, and I published it, and it went viral. And so the Frugal Physician took off. And I was like, now what do I do? And Josh goes, well, Josh is our IT guy. And so Josh is like, now you have to keep it up. Just keep producing content. So he's like, let's make you a schedule. He's a project manager, so he helped me, make a schedule and define things I needed to do. And I started doing it and started writing. There's so many fun things to write about, and so many hacks we were discovering, trying out. And so I just started sharing our journey, and that's how the Frugal Physician got started. And since then, it's been a really wonderful, exciting, and somewhat overwhelming journey at times, with collaborations, growth, and writing for major media platforms like CNBC, and for a finance column for Practice Link magazine. And then I had a brief stint at the White Coat Investor, and now I have my own podcast. So it's just been a really fun journey of exploring and learning and sharing.
That is so cool. Well, I'm grateful for Josh for giving you that push, and it's been cool to see you stick with it and see the growth, and it is awesome. How has the Frugal Physician, things that you learned, how has that given you a more balanced life, reinvigorated your love for medicine? How has it changed how you've practiced? What does that look like for you?
The one good thing about sharing all of your journey is that people give you feedback. And I get to talk to a lot of people about these really, somewhat complicated concepts and and I get free coaching along the way as I talk to financial coaches. And so they're telling, so it has helped me really get out of my scarcity mindset into a more abundance mindset, set up my finances, not just finances, but also psychology. It has helped me work through a lot of the blocks in my head. And it helped me realize that, number one, that we had reached Coast-Fi, which means we don't have to do anything else more than what we're doing already. And we're going to be fine, right? That whole "you're going to be fine" thing is not natural to me. So to realize that now I don't have to work full time. I can take some time back and spend it with my family. So I was able to cut back from 5 days a week to 3 days a week, and spend time with my kids and that helped make room for the growth of the Frugal Physician as well. So I could do my side hobby on the side with more time, and didn't feel like I was working 2 full-time jobs. So just helped balance out my life by helping me stop exchanging time for money, and helping me realize I had enough, that we were doing okay. And then now I'm using some of that financial wellness to help launch my own direct primary care practice, knowing that, we'll be okay, that we've got it managed. And also the Frugal Physician has taught me a lot of valuable skills that I can use as a physician entrepreneur in my site, like social media and marketing skills, as well as, SEO and just general business management. I feel like I got an MBA on the go trying to learn how to run a business. And, so hopefully it works out. But it's been a very positive force in my life.
That's amazing. I love that. And how cool is it that it's Wednesday at 11:26 Mountain Time and we're recording a podcast, which is really cool. So it just shows that the work and the effort does pay off. That is awesome. Well, I wanted to hit direct primary care real quick before we wrap things up. What do you love about direct primary care? Why have you decided to make the pivot into DPC practice?
I went into medicine because I love medicine, and I still love medicine. I love dealing with patients, and I love going to into a clinical care setting and just losing myself and serving others and making them feel better. But there is so much that's toxic in the healthcare workplace right now, from, administrators pushing you to do things too fast and too quickly and things you might be uncomfortable with, to, just the loss of autonomy when it comes to scheduling your own time. And during the last year, I had a surgery and in a convalescence period afterwards. And I was really doing a lot of soul searching, because on one hand, I could, go into the finance world more and get my certified financial planner certification and just do finance. Or I could continue to practice medicine the way I am. Or I could start my own thing, try to see if I can make medicine work for me in a better way. And when I really looked at what my purpose was in life, it came down to I would feel very disappointed in myself if I wasn't like that primary care doc for people, that person that knows them, that they can call, that when they're sick, and that knows everything about them and can advocate for them. And that's really who I want to be. So that's the PC is a means to end for that, because the primary care in the traditional model I've done it in a more FQHC type setting too. Neither one of them worked for me. I was trying to see too many patients in too little time. And so I decided I'm gonna try to start the DPC, because it's something I've been thinking about for a long time. I'm looking for sustainability in this career so that I can, continue to provide the service I want to provide. And hopefully DPC I see as a way to further the longevity in my career so I can continue to serve more people.
I agree. I love DPC. That's where I'm headed next after, taking some time off. And I just absolutely love the model. I mean, it's really kind of taken medicine back down to its roots, back to that community relationship-based, kind of removing all the extra barriers and just providing really good access for care with an emphasis on relationships. And that's what it's all about, right? Like, hey, how can we as primary care docs build relationships with our patients and their families to transform their health, right? And it gives you that time and availability to dive deep into some of these social determinants of health that are so impactful to care and so impactful to the patient's health that we just don't have the capability to do when you're seeing 20 plus patients and, you're always running late and you're running around like your hair's on fire, and it's just not a good model of care. And I think as a country, we have to sit back and take a look at like, hey, where do we want the healthcare system to go? Because I don't think anyone would say that healthcare in America right now is headed in the right direction and that we provide really good care.
Right.
There's a lot of amazing doctors out there and there's a lot of amazing things that we can do, but until primary care becomes the cornerstone of healthcare in America, I think we're just going to continue overspending and under-delivering good patient outcomes. And so I'll just leave it at that, because otherwise I'll go on a huge tangent. But I do think that there's a lot of change that's needed. And I think direct primary care is a great model that takes enormous leaps into the right direction of where healthcare needs to be.
I agree. And there's a lot of important legislation out there right now. While I have this platform, I'd like to mention the Primary Care Enhancement Act that's been proposed. It's in committee right now, but if you get a chance, look into this. This is an important bill for DPC, because currently HSA usability for DPCs, a health savings account, is it's not exactly allowed by IRS. In fact, the IRS still qualifies DPC plans as a secondary insurance, which it's certainly not. But that's how it's qualifying DPCs currently under the current code, which would actually might make people ineligible to even contribute to an HSA if they have a high deductible plan and sign up for a DPC, which is obviously really bad for people and for DPC docs. So what the Primary Care Enhancement Act is doing is trying to redefine DPCs as a primary care arrangement, not a health insurance plan, so that people don't get disqualified from contributing to their HSA, and then hopefully can actually use those HSA funds to pay for their DPC fees, which would make sense. So, this is an important legislation that needs to go through. It's been proposed several times and has been dropped, I think just because of lack of people knowing about it or calling their senators about it. So if you get a chance, please call your senator and ask them to vote yes on this bill.
That is awesome. Yeah, thanks for hitting that. I think legislation and sticking up for ourselves is really important. So you got the Primary Care Enhancement Act. That would be huge if that kind of stipulation came off of HSA. It would make things so much easier for folks and for people to get the full benefit of an HSA account to pay for DPC. So super, super important going forward. So that is awesome. Well, you are working on a lot of things, that's for sure. How can folks reach out to you if they want to know more, if they want to just follow your journey? What's the best way to contact you?
Absolutely. I'm available at thefrugalphysician@gmail.com. If you want to check out my website and podcast, it's at thefrugalphysician.com. And I'm on most social media platforms as well.
That's awesome. And we'll include those links in the show notes so folks can give you a follow and check out the website. It's amazing what you're doing. Dr. Spath, I'm so excited for what's coming next for you, for direct primary care and everything else. So thank you for taking the time today.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Awesome. With that, it has been the Frugal Physician, Dr. Disha Spath and Dr. Alex Schloe with another episode of the Physicians and Properties Podcast. Signing off. Hey, real quick, if you're still listening to this, I'm assuming you got value from it. So I need your help specifically. My 2-year vision with this podcast is to help 100,000 physicians learn how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want. There are 2 main ways that a podcast grows. One is through ratings and reviews, and the other is word of mouth. If you can please leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as send this to 1 to 2 friends that you think would get value from it, we can reach the physicians that we want to reach. Thanks in advance, and talk to you on the next episode. Please note that the information shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial or medical advice. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the host and the guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense or the United States Air Force.